Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 11, Barbarian Ghost Sect. The place where the platform landed was a grassy plain. Not far from the plain was a sparsely filled forest that hid a couple of rock houses. Liu Ming took a couple of looks at the rock houses before glancing around the plain. Another 40 to 50 meters away from him was another platform that many youths also stepped down from. Go down. How much longer are you going to stay? An impatient voice came from behind Liu Ming, and when he looked, the middle-aged man was darkly rushing toward him. At this time, almost everyone had left the platform, and his pause at the edge of the platform was a little eye-catching. Liu Ming lowered his head and apologized before walking with the crowd in front of him. Finally, he gave the mountain in front of him a look. The mountain was incredibly tall and the bottom half was covered with varying structures. A long, deep path twirled around the mountain like a serpent and led straight to the top of the mountain. The top half of the mountain was hidden behind white clouds and couldn't be seen well. Blobs of gray clouds flew down from the top half of the mountain. On top of these clouds were single or multiple people that had varying attire. They were young and old, male and female, and because of their height, their faces were indistinguishable. These people were obviously spirit apostles in the barbarian ghost sect. When they passed over the plain, a few of the more curious ones took a peek while others just flew by without so much as glancing down. This demonstration of power created an excited buzz among the waiting youths. There were even some that started daydreaming of their life after becoming a spirit apostle. At this time, the middle-aged man left the platform. After seeing the messy and loud youths, he criticized them without reservation. This is barbarian ghost sect, not your home. Everyone shut up and line up behind me. After this, the man jumped onto a nearby path that led toward the rock houses. The few hundred youths quickly made a couple of questionable lines and followed him. On the other platform, a female dressed in white led the other group of youths down another path. A little while later, the two groups met at an intersection in the forest. Without any orders, the two groups naturally joined together and combined as they quickly walked out of the forest. What greeted them was a grass field with rows of stone houses. At this time, there were about a dozen green-clothed people waiting there respectfully. I have brought the people with Senior Shun. You guys organize them. There is still half a month before the opening spirit ceremony, and during this time, they can wander around this hill but not leave it. If they do, their qualifications to attend the opening spirit ceremony will be taken away. The middle-aged man coldly glared at the green-clothed people before ordering coldly. Yes. Senior Zhang, Senior Shun. We will definitely take care of them. Of them, a vicious-looking male walked up and respectfully answered. Oh, Fang Xiong Jr.'s work is quite reassuring. I'll be going to the administration hall to get my reward. The middle-aged man nodded and responded with an easy expression. Then he and the white-cloaked female muttered a few words before gray clouds sprouted under their feet. With a shudder, they flew toward a mountain. All right, you brats heard him. You will be living here for half a month, and during that time, you are not allowed to leave this forest. If I find someone disobeying my orders and leaving this forest, the first time I find you will result in 10 snake whips, second time will be 30 snake whips, and the third time I find you, I will take away your qualifications to participate in the opening spirit ceremony. The man named Fang Xiong waited until the middle-aged man left before he stood up straight and rudely yelled at the hundreds of youths waiting. What? Didn't the person from before say that we could walk around a little? How did it become not leaving the forest? I came to participate in the opening spirit ceremony, not to be imprisoned. Hearing Fang Xiong's words, someone in the crowd protested. Brat, what did you say? Fang Xiong's face darkened as he grabbed the air in front of him. Immediately, a well-built youth from the crowd was pulled out of it and stumbled to the front. When the youth stood back up again, he had a knife in one of his hands. With eyes full of anger, he stared at Fang Xiang, but he didn't actually run forward to vent his anger, knowing the difference in strength. "I'll tell you the truth. We were the same as you a couple of years ago. We were also participants of the opening spirit ceremony. However, since we weren't successful in opening our spirit seas, we were forced to adhere to the rules and work for 20 years. Seeing that there are 700 to 800 of you here right now, you guys would be lucky if even 10 people become spirit apostles. In the opening spirit ceremony, at least 2/3 of you will die and the rest will become outer sect members like us. Therefore, don't even think of being all arrogant. If you guys don't listen, we won't hesitate to use force." What Senior Zhang said before was out of respect. "This place is way too big for us to let you brats run amok. One more thing, the weakest of us is a high-tier practitioner and I'm an elite practitioner. If someone says that they don't agree with my conditions, they are free to come and fight with me. If someone beats me, I'll let him or her do whatever he or she wants." Fang Xiang looked at the youths and spoke savagely. "TL, ranks of practitioners and most things go like low tier, middle tier, high tier, elite tier." When the youths heard this speech, their excitement from earlier left them, and was instead replaced with fear and sadness. Seeing that Fang Xiang was an elite practitioner, the youths who were at most low-tier practitioners didn't do something as dumb as challenge Fang Xiang. When Liu Ming heard the speech, no expression was shown on his face. However, when he heard that Fang Xiang was an elite practitioner, his heart gave a violent beat. Fang Xiang was at most 30 and already so powerful. Even if Liu Ming failed the opening spirit ceremony, staying at the barbarian ghost sect wasn't a bad option. However, he had to live through the opening spirit ceremony first. "Listen up. Now, we will be dividing the rooms. If you're called, step forward." Seeing the effect of his words on the youths, Fang Xiang smiled. Of course, there were still a few youths with great backgrounds that didn't care, but it did not matter to Fang Xiang. As long as most of the youths would accept management, it was fine. Those youths with special backgrounds were people that even Fang Xiang didn't dare offend. Even taking away their backgrounds, these youths had a much greater chance to pass the opening spirit ceremony and thus become Fang Xiang and his group's boss. At this time, a 30-year-old female walked forward and took out a light yellow book. Quickly, she started to call out names. Soon, at least 100 youths were called and taken to one of the stone houses by the female. Like this, each outer sect member brought a group of youths to each stone house. Almost instantly, the field was left with about 70 to 80 youths. Liu Ming, Gao Chong, Mu Mingzhu and Lei Zhen were all in this group. No need to call names anymore. All of you follow me, I'll personally see to you brats. Fang Xiang looked at the rest of the youths and spoke decisively. Hearing this, the other outer sect members all showed carefree expressions and left. When the youths heard that Fang Xiang, who was like a vicious thug, was going to arrange their living quarters, at least half of their faces paled. Fang Xiang ignored them and turned around to walk toward a group of stone houses. With a laugh, a youth walked out of the crowd and followed Fang Xiang. It was Lei Zhen from the Lei clan. When the rest of the youth saw that someone else was already following Fang Xiang, they also started walking forward. Liu Ming walked among them, not attracting any attention. When the youths disappeared out of sight, a nearby tree rippled and transformed into two shadows. The first person had a face that was slightly yellow with a gown. He had a yellow wood hairpin in his hair and both of his hands behind his back. The other person had messy hair, bare feet, and a bare chest with a scarlet gourd at his waist. Junior, how do you feel? Do you think that there is any talent in these youths? The gowned person watched the disappearing youths and asked. Humph, Senior Gui is asking when he knows the answer. How am I supposed to know now? Don't we pick our division members after the ceremony? Does Senior want to place bets on these kids early this year? The messy-haired man with a smiling round face muttered after hearing the question. It's not like you don't know how our division is. If there really are 9 spiritual pulse sect members, the other division would get first pick. If we want to get some talent, we have to look in these outside youths. I heard that there are some loose practitioners joining this year, maybe they are decently talented. The gowned man slowly said. Even if Senior is right, how are we supposed to glean anything right now? When the opening spirit ceremony finishes, the other divisions will definitely steal the talents. Chapter 12, Multitasking. We aren't fighting with them for our sect-trained members. If they dare try to take these outsiders, I will definitely fight them for it. Even though our faction has been weak for many years, we won't let others trample over us. The gowned man replied. Since Senior has already decided, Junior Zhong and I will support you. Our faction has only 3 spiritual masters, so we must do everything as one. After a few seconds, the messy-haired man responded. Just as the messy-haired man barely finished, his face changed and he started coughing violently. Quickly, he took the red gourd at his waist and drank the crisp green liquid that was inside. A thick wine scent wafted in the air. What was in the gourd was an unknown powerful wine. After drinking, the messy-haired man's face recovered. Junior Zhu, are you okay? The chill in your body has been there for many years, and just using medicinal wine to suppress it isn't a long-term solution. Seeing this, the gowned man spoke with a worried face. It's fine. As long as I can drink this 3 sun wine in time, I can control the chill. You don't need to worry about it. Junior Zhu replied with a smile, as if he didn't care about his chill. It's all my fault. I knew that you had just become a spiritual master and should have insisted that you rest and familiarize yourself with your new power. Instead, you went to Nightmare Valley. If you hadn't done so, you probably wouldn't have gotten that chill. This isn't Senior's fault. I requested to go of my will. After all, Senior was at an important point of his training and couldn't leave our sect. However, Junior Zhong was in a life-or-death situation and we couldn't waste any time. After this opening spirit ceremony, I'll go ask Martial Uncle for some pure sun pills. Even though these pills can't cure your chill, they can at least alleviate your pain. It's fine. Martial Uncle is still trying to make a breakthrough and our previous interruptions have caused displeasure with the other factions. If we go again, they would definitely make trouble. With a bitter smile, the messy-haired man replied. You don't need to worry about that. If they really do come, I will take care of it. The gowned man said with a cold humph. After hesitating for a second, the messy-haired man stayed silent. Soon, the two disappeared in a gust of mist. At this time, the youths had finally arrived at their newly constructed stone houses. Under the arrangements of the man leading, they quickly found their respective homes. When Liu Ming pushed open his fresh wooden door, a room that was about 4 to 5 meters in length appeared before his eyes. There was a green wood table, a chair of the same material, and a gray stone bed. On the bed was a thin layer of a blanket. Other than that there was nothing else in the room. Seeing this, Liu Ming didn't show displeasure and instead lightly sighed. With a few steps, he jumped onto his bed. The simple arrangement within the stone house made him recall his tough life on Savage Island. For an instant, he felt as if he was back on that deadly, ruthless place. After a long time, Liu Ming finally came back to his senses. Then, he sprang into action by inspecting every possible corner of the room before finally relaxing and recalling past memories on the bed. Back then, Liu Ming was sent to Savage Island because his father had been taken in by the government. Even though many years had passed, he could still recall every single detail of the ordeal. When it all began, there was only his father and a couple of servants in the house. He had never been able to remember his mother even in his oldest memories. What he was told was that his mother died of a miscarriage when he was young. As for his relatives and his parents' friends, he had never heard his father speak of them. When he asked others, they told him that his father had moved here when he was still an infant. Even they did not know where the duo of father and son had come from. His father was always very strict. Ever since Liu Ming could understand things, he was forced to learn and memorize ancient texts. A few days before Liu Ming's father was taken in, his father suddenly made Liu Ming, who was only a couple years old, memorize a secret place. Only when Liu Ming memorized the place and was told to not tell another living soul did his father finally let the matter go. And a few days later, his father was taken in while he was sent to Savage Island. Maybe those officers didn't think that a small kid would have any useful information. However, even if Liu Ming never said a word of it to anyone else, he would still smile bitterly whenever he remembered that place. When he was still small, he didn't know the meaning behind the place he memorized. Now that he knew exactly what that place was, it was no different than a tiger's cave or a dragon's lair. If he didn't have enough power, then going there would be suicide. Liu Ming was not stupid, and realized that since his father was so serious about him memorizing that place, there was probably some kind of huge secret centered around it. It also probably had something to do with his father being taken in. The hands behind the scene used the sentence of great disrespect to the king to kill his father. This was definitely the act of someone with a lot of power, and normal detective skills were bound to alert that someone, bringing that person trouble. But the death of his father was something that had to be avenged. When Liu Ming thought about that, a glint of coldness that was uncharacteristic for his age flashed across his eyes. Before, he had no chance to avenge his father, but now, if he could become a spiritual apostle or at least live through the spiritual opening ceremony, he could easily take revenge. However, when he thought about the fraction that the man from earlier mentioned, it caused Liu Ming's heart to sink a little. During his time with Guan Laoda and Gu Lao San, Liu Ming had asked about the opening ceremony. Unfortunately, the two were only high-end servants in the Bai clan and didn't know much. All they knew was that the ceremony would stabilize and show the spiritual pulses within one and create a spiritual sea within the participants that passed. Once one had a spiritual sea, one could slowly transfer Yuanli into folly, and the speed at which one trained Yuanli would also increase by leaps and bounds. The spiritual sea was something of a mystery to Guan Laoda and Gu Lao San, so Liu Ming could not gain much information beforehand. All he could do was practice his Yuanli manipulation. Even though Liu Ming didn't know if having better Yuanli manipulation could help his chances of passing the opening spirit ceremony, it was all he could do right now. Suddenly, Liu Ming thought of his special talent and a quick smile came to his face. This talent did not come to Liu Ming when he was born. Instead, it came to him after he had been taken to Savage Island. He had a huge fever after seeing the ruthless and bloody scenes on the island, and when he woke up, he strangely had this talent. This talent allowed Liu Ming to split his conscious in two and allowed him to control both halves of his body to do different things at the same time. However, this talent was slightly different from the well-known being able to do two things with one mind. His two consciences could be individually trained to be stronger, and he could also have one half actively working while the other half was sleeping. However, the being able to do two things with one mind would never be able to do that. Once Liu Ming realized he had this new talent, he carefully asked the friendly inhabitants on Savage Island. He then looked through quite a few scrolls before confirming that he had a strengthened mutation of the two things, one mind. As for what this mutation truly was and what side effects it would bring, Liu Ming knew nothing of those matters. Either way, Liu Ming never wasted any time after gaining this new talent, and after years of training his two consciences, his mental strength was about twice the amount of a normal person's. If not for his mental strength, he would have died long ago under the pursuit of the Black Tiger guards. He also didn't display this talent in front of Guan Laoda and Gu Lao San. Being able to utilize alternate halves of his conscious was no longer something as simple as 1 plus 1. TL, 1 plus 1 in Chinese means that it wasn't something that had an addition property. On Savage Island, Liu Ming could train a technique for 5 or 6 days before taking one nap to recover to peak condition. Basically, his training time was quite a few times greater than the normal person's. Which was why, at such a young age, Liu Ming could already smoothly perform so many techniques. As Liu Ming thought of this, he closed his eyes and started training on the stone bed. To him, relaxing was a luxury that he could not afford. In the next half-month, Liu Ming would train his Yuanli manipulation every second, only pausing when it was time to eat. The tiger bite ring, which was originally quite hard to use, was much smoother to control with the half-month of training. At the same time, some of the other youths trained as recklessly as Liu Ming. Some walked around the forest, and some began to start forming relationships with the other youths. As for Fang Xiong and the outer sect members, they ignored the youths as long as they didn't walk out of the forest. Like this, the day of the opening spirit ceremony finally came. Chapter 13, Spirit Convergence Stage. Chapter 13, Spirit Convergence Stage. Liu Ming was sitting cross-legged in the stone house, when he suddenly heard the envoy's voice. "Everyone come out, the opening spirit ceremony will be held today. I will bring all of you to Spirit Convergence Stage where the ceremony will proceed." Though the voice was not loud, it resounded around the stone house, allowing Liu Ming to hear each word perfectly. With a deep sigh, Liu Ming got off the stone bed, pushed open the door and proceeded to walk out. What greeted his eyes were countless young men and women who were crowding and rushing like a pack of angry bees along the small pathway. At the end of the path, through the cracks of the forest, 2 barely discernible ash-colored stages sat quietly on the grasslands. The man from Liu Ming's envoy, Senior Zhang, was wearing black, and the woman wearing a white cloak, Senior Sun, were each standing on 2 gray clouds floating above the platforms. Fang Xiong and the 10 or so outer sect members were standing near the platforms, making a respectful pose with both hands clasped together. A very different face from the overbearing ones they wore earlier in front of Liu Ming and the rest. When the young men and women saw this scene, they subconsciously fell into a respectful manner. They slowed their steps as they entered the platform in an orderly manner. After the final person stepped onto the platform, the man in black swept his gaze downward. Finding that everyone was on the platform, he nodded his head and fetched out a round plate. Then he made a one-handed technique and started chanting. As he completed his chant, the disc immediately let out a faint light. With a pu sound, countless spirit markings on the surface of the platform lit up at once. Another layer of white light similar to the one from earlier appeared, enveloping the entire platform in its glow. Following which, the demon statues surrounding the stage shuddered in unison as they opened their mouths to let a thick black fog spew forth. As the black fog surged forward and spread out, it transformed into a black cloud that gobbled up the entire platform along with the light he created. The 2 platforms slowly started to rise into the air before gently flying toward a huge mountain in the distance. Liu Ming stood near one of the statues and looked at the spirit light that glittered across the surface, his gaze dull as if he were deep in thought. Not far from him, shockingly, Mu Mingzhu and Gao Chong were discussing something in hushed tones. It had only been 10 days since they last met, yet this couple had become even more intimate. While at the center of the stage, Lei Zhen proudly stood. Coincidentally, he was surrounded by a crowd of about 30 members from various influential families. At other spots on the platform, groups of 7 to 10 people crowded around certain individuals. These past few days, many young men and women had spontaneously formed many small groups. It looked like quite a few people had realized that their chances at the spiritual opening ceremony were not too optimistic. Thus they placed all their hope on others who had chances to become spirit apostles. This way, even if they became an outer sect member of the barbarian ghost sect, they would still have someone to rely on. As to why these people from influential families did this, it was likely due to prior instructions from their clan elders. Furthermore, Some of them had probably even been given a list of targets to attach themselves to. Else they would not have formed groups so quickly. Surprisingly, there were also about 5 or 6 young men and women around Gao Chong and Liu Ming. Compared to 10 days before, the tall young man looked much more confident. Looks like quite a few people looked favorably upon this loose practitioner's future prospects. Ever since Liu Ming and Gao Chong had come aboard the platform, they did not seem to have any intentions of calling out to Liu Ming, who was a companion they had initially arrived with. Even more so, Liu Ming would not be the one to initiate a conversation with others. He was more like a lone wolf who would only watch from the side, detached from the others. Because the platform was completely wrapped in black clouds, Liu Ming and the others were unable to see what was happening outside. It was quite a while later before the platform slightly shuddered and the man's voice once again sounded out from within the light. "We have reached the spirit convergence stage, all of you can get off now." Just as his voice faded away, the black clouds rumbled as they started to disperse. At the same time the light of his also disappeared after one final flash. Liu Ming lifted his head and swept his gaze about the now visible surroundings. As the new view entered his eyes, he could not help but gasp. To everyone's astonishment, they were currently in a huge circular plaza. Just outside the plaza was a ring-shaped viewing tower. The tower was filled to the brim with about 4,000 to 5,000 people. The sounds from this restless crowds could be heard even from a distance away. Out of these people, only a small portion were true spirit apostles, the rest were just tag-along outer sect disciples of the barbarian ghost sect. These tag-alongs were akin to servants of the spirit apostles. On closer inspection, there seemed to be an obviously higher level in the ring-shaped viewing tower. At this level, 7 or 8 figures shrouded in different colored lights were faintly discernible. They stood shoulder to shoulder as they discussed something in hushed tones. At the center of the plaza, there were over 100 barbarian ghost sect outer sect disciples dressed in green gowns. Each one held a pen in hand as they drew thick, twisting silver lines on the ground. In the air above them, 7 or 8 spirit apostles flew back and forth on clouds, inspecting the work. These spirit lines crisscrossed and squirmed about. Viewed from above, a huge silver picture was gradually forming and could vaguely be seen. Within the picture, countless thick silver lines weaved together and overlapped with one another, roughly forming into many queer silver-colored words. Anyone who stared too long at these words would start to feel dizzy and nauseous. Liu Ming only glanced a few times at some of the weird characters in the picture before withdrawing his gaze, not daring to stare any further. As they were urged on, the group of young men and women walked down the platform one by one and stood in bewilderment just outside of the silver picture. At this moment, a rumbling sound suddenly thundered from the heavens, and a third black cloud descended from the skies. After the black clouds dispersed, a group of young men and women clothed in the garbs of outer sect disciples orderly stepped away from the platform. These young men and women were different than Liu Ming and the others from influential families. They were all eerily calm and were surrounded by a faint cold aura. As they walked down the stage, they noiselessly arranged themselves in an orderly manner. The descendants from influential families next to Liu Ming were stunned. At this point, everyone realized that these people were the spiritual pulse apprentices under the tutelage of the barbarian ghost sect. If 1 out of every 100 person from the influential families could become a spirit apostle, then out of the carefully nurtured spiritual pulse apprentices, every 1 in 10 would be able to successfully open their spiritual sea. A spiritual pulse apprentice's chances of success were about 10 times higher than those in influential clans. It was no wonder that the sect took advantage of the wealth of the rich practitioner clans and paid little to no heed to their awakenings. Liu Ming's pupils shrunk as he watched the young men and women opposite him. The icy calmness each spiritual pulse apprentice possessed was incomparable to any regular practitioner youth. It was likely that they had gone through special training and were no stranger to violence and blood. At this time, the silver picture at the center of the plaza was finally completed. The outer sect disciples who had completed their task immediately withdrew from the plaza. Yet the few spirit apostles from the barbarian ghost sect remained. Together, they took out about 100 fist-sized clear crystals and placed the crystals in succession on various predetermined points marked by grooves. After the spirit apostles had finished their work, they once again did a final check from above. At this time, from the highest section of the viewing tower, a glowing red figure suddenly laughed and then opened his mouth. "Fellow disciples, I've heard that this batch of spiritual pulse disciples are quite decent. Among them there are even a few who could be outstanding. I've even heard that one of them managed to cause an argument between Junior Chu and Junior Lin. Is this true? Sect leader, I hope that you will be impartial and bring justice to this matter. That disciple was first found by me, yet Chu Senior ignored the rules and coerced the disciple into his group." A slender figure within the light angrily exclaimed as she heard his words. The identity of the glowing red figure who had first spoke was unexpectedly the sect leader of the Ghost Barbarian sect. "Junior Lin, those words are not right. There are only so many good seedlings within this batch of disciples, not even enough to split one for each group. Since your dancing ghost group has already set their sights on one of the good seedlings, please leave the child, Jia Lan, to our evil spirit group." Nearby, another tall figure bathed in a greenish glow chuckled as he bantered, not a single trace of anger in his voice. "Humph, our barbarian ghost sect is divided into 8 factions, our faction is the most appropriate for women to train their techniques. Stealing Jia Lan is not only an insult to her beauty and talent but also detrimental to the growth of the section." Junior Lin bluntly retorted, "Furthermore, she brought the sect's interests into the argument. Junior Lin need not worry about that. I will let Junior Ben take Jia Lan as a disciple and guide her along. He, Junior Ben's technique is also suitable for a woman to practice. It will absolutely not affect this child's potential." Chu Senior chuckled as he replied. "You. Forget it, stop fighting. This matter will wait until the disciple has opened her spiritual sea. Even possessing an astonishing soul will be useless if the spiritual sea is not opened." The sect leader interjected with a wave of his hand. Hearing the sect leader utter these words, Junior Chu and Junior Lin did not continue to argue. They could only utter a tch as they lapsed back into silence. "Right, Junior Gui, your 9 infant faction should also decide on a disciple. If you delay any further, you'll be left empty-handed again." The sect leader turned his head as he reminded a certain individual who was clothed in an ash-colored light. "Many thanks to sect leader for his reminder. Though there are quite a few disciples within the spiritual pulse apprentices who possess a special soul this time, our group is unable contest for them. I guess we'll just have to pick a few from the influential family's disciples." The ash-colored figure slightly bowed as he replied. Astonishingly, this voice belonged to the scholar that had originally appeared in the Green Jade Forest. Descendants of the influential families. Could there possibly be any good seedlings in this batch? I wonder which few Gui Senior has his eye on. Do share with the few of us too. Junior Chu asked while seemingly interested, a surprised expression on his face. "I have no choice but to select from the aristocratic family group. How can there truly be any good seedlings there?" Senior disciple Gui indifferently replied. Gui Senior has always been known as the demon calculator, we don't quite believe those words. Exactly which few does Gui Senior have his eyes on? Could you be afraid that the rest of us would contest for them if you revealed them? Junior Lin laughed before asking. Chapter 14, Jia Lan. Since Junior Lin has said it like this, I will speak of them. I believe that although the various juniors here love talent, they wouldn't lose face and fight for the clan descendant members with us, the 9 infants. After hesitating, the scholar replied with a sarcastic tone. Once these words left the scholar's mouth, the members from the other factions felt great embarrassment. Even though the 9 infants faction was much weaker than the other factions, to hear it be put so bluntly made everyone feel ashamed. Relax, Junior Gui. Take your pick. If anyone decides to challenge your right to do so, I will take care of it. No matter the talent that comes out of the clan descendant members, your sect will have the priority pick. The barbarian ghost sect leader acknowledged the difficulties faced by the 9 infant sect members and spoke in a solemn manner. Thank you, sect leader senior. Hearing that, the scholar smiled and thanked the sect leader. Naturally, the others had nothing to say. To be honest, there are only a few of decent talent from the clan descendant members. It's still uncertain if they will pass the opening spirit ceremony. Of them, Junior Zhu and I have already made contact with the 3 loose practitioners. From our estimates, the member called Gao Chong has a high chance of having a 9 spiritual pulse. Another member called Yu Cheng has some sort of innate talent in his eyes, and can practice the ghost dove techniques from our faction. There's some hope of him being able to master the unmastered dove eye technique. As for the last loose practitioner, he has very ordinary training talent. However, he has eaten a rotting poison spirit grass, and now his Yuanli has a rotting poison attribute. If he can pass the opening ceremony, there may be other surprises. As for the others, we've also made contact with a few clan members. However, only Lei Zhen is worth paying attention to. He will probably have a 9 spiritual pulse and probably have some of that bloodline power of the Lei clan. Once the scholar revealed his thoughts, the other faction members all showed signs of greed, but with the words from the sect leader, they could only stay quiet. Gui Senior, Lei Zhen is my nephew, so I plan to personally train him. A shadow that had been silent until now finally spoke with a low voice. I guessed that you would say something of that nature, so I only observed him without making contact. The scholar didn't show any emotions except slight disappointment. Thank you for your understanding. Junior Lei said with the hint of an apology. So Junior Gui would like to use your faction's 3 spots on the 3 loose practitioners. Junior Chu couldn't help but speak up. Yes. What? Does Junior want to trade your faction's pick of sect-trained members for these spots? The scholar replied with a smile. Haha, since Senior has put his sights on them, as your junior, I won't be forcing them away. Junior Chu yawned and quickly gave up. Even though Gao Chong and the other 2 loose practitioners were quite talented, they were obviously less important than the sect-trained members. Okay. If these 3 loose practitioners pass the opening spirit ceremony, they will be under the 9 infant faction. I wish for the 9 infant faction to recover its lost fame, and with our 8 factions together, our barbarian ghost sect can become even stronger. Seeing this, the barbarian ghost sect leader spoke slowly. Hearing this, some faction leaders nodded while others didn't move. The sect leader's brow furrowed upon seeing such a sight, but as he was about to say something, a spirit apostle flew over on a grey cloud. Sect leader, the spirit converging stage has been finished. It can be activated at any time. Since it is done, activate it. The sect leader replied without hesitation. Yes, sect leader. The sect member bowed and flew back to where he came from. At the same time, Liu Ming was surrounded by youths from influential clans. He was staring at a girl in the file of the barbarian ghost sect's own practitioners. Actually, it wasn't only him. There were countless gazes that were going to the same spot. There were even sect practitioners sneaking glances at her. That was because the girl was just too pretty. Even though she only looked to be about 13 or 14, she had snow-like skin and a delicate face. Jet black hair went past her shoulders, and there was an alluring glint in her eyes. Every move she made one's heart beat faster. The young girl seemed to be accustomed to being watched by many people. She retained her smile without showing any embarrassment. Liu Ming watched the girl for a while before suddenly realizing and biting his tongue to force his eyes away from her face. At the same time, he whimpered in his heart, scary. Was this the legendary Aphrodite body? At such a young age, the girl was already luring people in. Imagine the power she would have if she were a bit older. What made Liu Ming more scared was that the girl had been in the line for a long time but no one had noticed her before. How was it that it took a while for him to realize that such a pretty girl was there? In addition, Liu Ming felt a cold sweat when he realized that even the girls showed a hint of love as they gazed toward the pretty young girl. This girl was definitely strange. It would be better to be far from this girl. Liu Ming quickly made a decision. However, other people didn't have as strong of a conviction as Liu Ming, and their sneaky gazes turned to outright stares after realizing that the girl in question didn't care. After some time, the young girl furrowed her brow and looked toward the youths from the practitioner clans. The youths that met her gaze all lowered their heads with their cheeks flushed, but there were a few, like Lei Zhen, who returned her gaze boldly. When the young girl's gaze passed over Liu Ming and found that he wasn't looking at her like the others were but instead at the spirit convergence stage, she was slightly stunned but did not dwell on the matter. Hong! A milk-white beam shot out from the silver diagram and converged toward the sky. The clear crystals and silver lines embedded in stage also lit up, while the entire stage rumbled softly. At almost the same time, Liu Ming felt the air around him stiffen with something extra in it. After hesitating slightly, he took a deep breath and felt a refreshing sense wash over him. With such a drastic event, the youths who were still lost in the young girl's charm woke up, revealing surprised expressions as they looked to the stage. In addition, on the high platform, the barbarian ghost sect leader gave some orders after seeing the stage successfully activated. Junior Lei, as discussed before, you will be hosting the ceremony with the other juniors helping. The opening spirit ceremony is a large event for our sect and cannot be treated carelessly. Yes. Hearing that, the others on the platform bowed. The youths waiting suddenly saw a couple of shadows fly up from the high platform and speed toward the stage. The youths from influential clans were all stunned by the sight while the barbarian ghost practitioners kneeled down on one leg and shouted, "Greetings to our martial uncles." TL, martial uncle is a junior/senior of one's shifu, master/teacher. Stand. In a while, we will split you guys into files of 100 to enter the spirit convergence stage. In it, your life will be in jeopardy, but if you open your spiritual sea, you will no longer be immortal. I'll ask you one more time, is there anyone who would like to forego this chance? A shadow who was Junior Lei spoke softly and slowly. Hearing this, neither barbarian ghost practitioners nor youths from influential families spoke. No one was dumb enough to let so many resources go to waste. Good, very good. Junior Lei said two goods and nothing more. Liu Ming was hidden within the crowd and was curiously looking at the martial uncles in the air. Although, he couldn't see the real faces of these people because of the layer of light that surrounded them. When he looked back toward the barbarian ghost practitioners, he realized that the pretty girl who was drawing everyone's attention had disappeared. In fact, he could barely remember where that girl had been standing. Even though Liu Ming could be considered quite brave, he still felt a tinge down his back, much like seeing a ghost in broad daylight. The crowd that Liu Ming was in also seemed to have realized that they couldn't find the girl anymore. With the realization came a decent-sized commotion while many revealed expressions of disbelief on their faces. On the high platform, the barbarian ghost sect leader saw this and looked toward a slightly pretty girl. He smiled at Junior Lin, who hadn't flown into the air to host the ceremony. Jia Ian's Aphrodite body is truly amazing. It has quite an effect even before she has opened her spiritual sea. I think she will be quite impressive when she becomes a spirit apostle. Humph, if not for that, why would I fight with Chu Senior over her? Unfortunately, even though this spiritual body is quite rare, the owner of the body has many more obstacles in training. The Aphrodite body isn't very useful against those that are of a higher level than the owner. Junior Lin bragged proudly before starting to list off the inadequacies of that spiritual body. Chapter 15, Awakening, Part 1. The Aphrodite body has unimaginable powers against opponents of the same level. Thus, as long as the child successfully awakens, even if her training talent is slow, we would use spirit medicines to push her level up. The barbarian ghost sect leader said resolutely. Yes. This child will be very important to our sect in the future and will possibly become one of our pillars. However, besides Leizhen, there's nothing special about the rest of the kids from the clans. Even if some of them can barely become spirit apostles, they probably won't have more than a 3 spiritual pulse. That is the lowest type of talent and have no hope of becoming spirit masters. If the 3 loose practitioners cannot complete the awakening ceremony and there's no talent among the practitioners from the clans, I'm afraid Senior Gui will have to return disappointed. Junior Lin said after pondering the crowd. From past years, loose practitioners have at least a 1/3 chance of becoming spirit apostles. However, when you say the other practitioners are useless, I do not agree. The sect leader mused for a bit, and spoke as he shook his head. What? Did I miss someone? Are there more good talents within the family disciples? No, even if I miss them, how could Senior Gui also miss them? Junior Lin said, startled. As for the others I do not know, but this kid is a bit interesting. The sect leader smiled slightly. Suddenly, he lifted his finger and pointed it in midair before he drew a circle that lingered in air. Suddenly, a green light flashed and the circle turned into a mirror that was clear as water, revealing a youth dressed in a bright robe. The youth, who was looking up at the spirit masters without blinking, was Liu Ming. This kid? He doesn't seem very special. Does he have one of the mythical hidden spiritual bodies? Junior Lin looked at Liu Ming through the lens for a while before asking slowly. I don't know whether or not he has a hidden spiritual body, but his mental energy is probably a lot higher than the average person. The sect leader replied patiently. Oh? How does sect leader Senior know? Junior Lin heard this and was naturally curious. Very simple. Earlier when Jia Ian's Aphrodite body accidentally leaked out, only this kid was not affected at all, and he could actually force himself to look away from Jia Lan. Just this self-control is already worth complimenting. The sect leader replied with a smile. So it's like that. Then, this kid really is worth looking forward to. Junior Lin said. Liu Ming naturally did not know that due to the charming girl from earlier, he had become known in the eyes of 2 spirit masters. Currently he was spending all his focus feeling the energy the magical formation on the stage was giving off. The surroundings now had many different abnormalities. As he ran through his nameless technique, the Yuanli in his body started to run 1.5 times faster than before. As he raised his arm, he could clearly feel a sluggishness. Although it was weak enough that it could be ignored, it definitely existed. Liu Ming's face showed his surprise and he looked at the silver formation with a hint of anticipation. If such a startling effect could be felt outside the formation, once he entered, the results would be even more amazing. Time is up, instill the spirit drops. The lay spirit master commanded. As the sound fell, dozens of spirit apostles flew from the tall platforms around. These barbarian ghost sect spirit apostles were all wearing black robes while holding light green bottles. As they arrived close to the edge of the formation, they simultaneously smacked the bottoms of the bottles. Puff, puff. A milky white substance poured from each bottle, forming dozens of white lines that shot toward the top of the formation. Then, the milky white light started to fall from the air. Practitioners of our sect, enter the formation. The junior lay in the air commanded with a shout. The barbarian ghost sect practitioners heard this and instantly sprinted onto the stage. They chose a seat to sit down on which were positioned a set distance from each other. Enough. As soon as the formation reached 100 people, the spirit master in the air spoke again and waved his arm downward. The barbarian ghost sect practitioners that had still wanted to enter after his command instantly felt an invisible wall and were pushed back. These practitioners felt a bit disappointed and stood waiting outside. Liu Ming and the other clan youths, without any orders, could only keep their eyes open as they stood in place without moving. They didn't have much anger in their hearts. This opening spirit ceremony was originally intended for the disciples of the barbarian ghost sect. That meant they had nothing to complain about by being placed last. Some would actually use this chance to watch how the barbarian ghost sect practitioners open their spiritual seas. Even though the elders of their respective families had explained the process countless times, being able to see it with their own eyes was a completely different story. They may gain something by seeing it, allowing them to obtain a small advantage during their own awakening. Liu Ming especially could not give up this chance to see the opening ceremony firsthand, and he stared at a select few that he had noticed before. At this point, the spirit masters in the air saw that all the practitioners had sat down and finished making their preparations. With a flash they all moved to their respective positions and started their own chants, letting out a horrifying spiritual pressure. The practitioners outside the formation quickly rushed back as they felt the pressure. Several useless and weak practitioners grew pale and fell down without strength. However, the practitioners within the formation seemed to be protected in some way and could not feel the horrifying pressure. Some practitioners even peeked at the spirit masters in the air out of curiosity. Lay spirit master's aura, under his chant, grew stronger and stronger. He lifted one of his arms and pointed out one of his fingers. With a soft hum, a drop of silver liquid left his finger and went into the white light created by the spirit drops. At that moment, an amazing scene appeared. The white light, as if gaining a mind of its own, shot toward the silver liquid and quickly merged together with it. In a moment, a man-sized white circle formed soundlessly in mid-air. Go! Spirit Master Lay's hand pointed toward the white light. Under Lay's control, the white light sank like a meteor, shooting accurately at a barbarian ghost sect practitioner that was sitting down. This practitioner was only around 13 to 14 years old and had a handsome face. As the white light touched him, he fell flat on the ground with his four limbs spread out. It was as if the white light was an incredibly heavy weight. Even more strange, as the white light pressed against the youth, it did not disappear instantly. Instead, under Lay Spirit Master's control, it moved around a bit and wrapped completely around the youth. The silver drop at the center of the light also merged into the youth's body and disappeared without a trace. The youth on the floor let loose a deep breath and crawled back up from the floor with a roar. After a struggle, he once again sat down in lotus position, and circulated his inner energy with his eyes closed. This same scene was happening all around him. The other spirit masters also let loose a silver liquid and let the large white light fall onto the practitioners below. Most practitioners reacted similar to the first youth and were instantly pressed to the ground without being able to move. Only a few with particularly strong bodies could sit and withstand the pressure. They watched the light being absorbed by their body. The spirit masters saw this and nodded secretly while noting each of these practitioners' locations and faces. The spirit masters cast their spell very quickly and rapidly gathered 100 silver drops to let each disciple be enveloped by the light. At this time, Lay Spirit Master reached into his sleeve and pulled out a green token. Without a word, he waved it at a light formation below. With a muffled sound, a finger-sized green light shot from the face of the token and into a crystal in the center of the formation. Boom! With a flash, the white light around the entire formation became bright and many white light pillars started to rise into the air. The remaining white light in the air grew blurry and started to fall down like rain. Even outside the formation, Liu Ming could feel the change in his surroundings and unconsciously started to squint. At this time, Lay Spirit Master said while in the air, under the power of the formation, we have caused the energy in the air to grow to its maximum concentration. At the same time, we imparted a bit of our own energy onto your body to increase your chances. What you need to do now is use this outside strength to awaken the spirit energy in your body and create your spiritual sea in your danshan in one breath. This will cause unimaginable pain, as if 1,000 blades were cutting into you. Whether you end up with life or death, become an immortal or mortal, is all up to you. Now, I will use some mantra in order to guide you through the awakening process. After Lay Spirit Master said this, he looked at the other spirit masters. Then, he willingly took out a golden scroll and threw it in front of him. Chapter 16, Awakening, Part 2. The golden scroll flew through the air and, in a flash, transformed into a film of golden light floating in the air. Within the light screen, grain-sized silver characters started to appear and flash in a faint light. The lay spirit master then formed a sign with one hand, and at the same time the light around his body cracked open, revealing his true form. Shockingly, it was a huge bearded man dressed in a purple robe. He had a wide chest and just by standing he gave off an imposing feeling. Lay spirit master stared at the characters in the golden light. He changed his hand signs while he used his mouth to start his chant. Liu Ming surprisingly found that he suddenly could not hear anything. He glanced over at the other clan practitioners. He found out that most of them also had stunned faces. Obviously, he was not the only one who couldn't hear anything. As Liu Ming's gaze shifted toward the formation again, he found the barbarian ghost sect practitioners showing expressions of pain as soon as the bearded man had started to chant. Some of their faces immediately twisted and the white light that surrounded them flashed strangely. A spirit master's techniques were really mysterious. Their mantra could actually focus on a specific area, leaving everything outside the formation completely unaffected. Liu Ming couldn't help but start to look forward to the spells of a spirit master. They obviously were not on the same level compared to practitioners who could borrow the strength of talismans to cast some small techniques. Bang, bang. Two muffled sounds were heard. The faces of two of the youths that were sitting in the formation convulsed, before their heads suddenly exploded from within. The white light that was surrounding them also disappeared, allowing their headless bodies to fall directly to the ground. Seeing the bloody scene, some of the more timid clan practitioners let out a cry while the others couldn't help but turn pale. The practitioners of the barbarian ghost sect that hadn't entered the formation also couldn't help but feel a hint of unease. But the spirit masters in the air and the spirit apostles within the formation acted as if they did not see it at all. Right as Liu Ming finished looking at the two headless bodies, a third barbarian ghost sect practitioner stood up. His hands waved frantically for a bit before his head also cracked open. Humph! How useless! We just started and there are people that already cannot withstand the energy. The next time our sect chooses practitioners, we should probably be a bit more strict. The barbarian ghost sect leader said unhappily as he saw this from the high platform. Sect leader senior. Without going through the awakening ceremony, we can only predict the practitioner's talent. For there to be some mistakes is unavoidable. The practitioner that just died was actually one that I had high hopes for. During the training before, he performed quite well. Junior Lin forced a smile from the side. No matter how it is said, our sect invests a large amount of resources on each practitioner. To be more strict in choosing practitioners can't really be wrong. The sect leader replied, unmoved. Yes. Junior and the other seniors will definitely deliberate more over the next batch of disciples, in order to choose even more talented practitioners. Junior Lin could only reply as such. The barbarian ghost sect leader heard this and gave a slow nod. He continued watching the rest of the practitioners still going through the ceremony. After the 3 deaths on the stage, there were no more instant deaths. But as time went on, the white light started to form into strands that frantically tried to squeeze through the practitioner's skin. The face of the practitioners that had this white light in them started to convulse and shake. Quite a few had eyes that glowed incredibly red, showing hints of madness within them. After a couple of soft sounds, another 4 to 5 corpses fell into their own pool of blood. Liu Ming saw the situation and the corner of his eye couldn't help but twitch. At this time, the spirit rain in the formation started to slow down and the white light on the practitioners' bodies shrunk quite a bit. It was to the point that some of their limbs could be seen. A spirit master saw this and waved his hands without a word. The spirit apostles outside the formation immediately used the bottles in their hands. Streams of spirit rain formed into white strings and shot out from them. The white light inside the formation shone once again, and automatically flew toward each of the practitioners. The white light surrounding them was repaired to how they were at first. Thick spirit rain also started to fall again from the sky. Suddenly, one of the youths that was sitting lost all traces of pain from his face. Instead, he had a very comfortable expression. He suddenly opened his mouth and let loose a clear sound. At the same time the sound came out, clear white lines appeared on his body. 1 stripe, 2 stripes, 3 stripes, it continued to 6 stripes before finally stopping. The barbarian ghost sect practitioner was at loss at first, but when he saw the 6 stripes on his body, he cried out in immense happiness. TL, spiritual pulses appear in threes. They would appear in either a 3, 6, 9, or 12 pattern. I successfully awakened my spiritual C. I have 6 spiritual pulses. I am a spirit apostle. Why are you shouting? There are others that have not succeeded. Stay inside and stabilize your spiritual C. Once you leave, there won't be a chance as good as this for you to take advantage of. A spirit master saw this and chided softly. This barbarian ghost sect spirit apostle's mind cleared up and he quickly sat back down to take advantage of the energy. As the first spirit apostle appeared in the formation, the second and third also made appearances. There were also some that could not withstand the energy and died with their heads exploding. After half an hour passed, when the 9th spirit apostle appeared, more than a fourth of the practitioners had already died. The rest of the practitioners were holding on and continuing, but clearly to no avail. Lay Spirit Master saw this and coldly announced, "Time is up. The rest of the practitioners that did not awaken successfully will become our sect's outer disciples. Everyone must leave the formation now while the second batch of disciples may enter." As Lay Spirit Master's voice dropped, the formation stopped abruptly. The light on the practitioners within all disappeared. The pain of the disciples still trying to open their spiritual sea stopped immediately. They immediately became dejected as soon as they understood what had happened. Within the sect, the difference between an outer disciple and a spirit apostle was like heaven and earth. No matter how outstanding they were before, they could only become the lowest type of existence within the barbarian ghost sect after their spiritual seas failed to open. The 9 successful disciples, who held similar positions as them while they were practitioners, would be much superior to them now. Not only would the successful ones receive the sect's careful nurturing, but they will also be introduced to and practice unimaginable spells, like ones that will allow them to fly through the air and tunnel through the earth. Even their longevity will be increased incomparably. At this time, the blood stains and corpses within the formation were cleaned up by tens of outer disciples that came out of nowhere. Even the floor was washed with clean water, rinsing away even the last drop of blood within the formation. The second batch of practitioners, under Lay's Spirit Master's command, also entered the formation and sat down. The same scene was acted out once more. The only difference is that there was a different Spirit Master using the mantra. Lay Spirit Master landed outside the formation and started to rest with his eyes closed. Using the power of mantra for 2 hours was a huge exertion for a Spirit Master. They could not help but rotate and rest. The awakening process took about 2 hours every time. The remaining 3 batches of barbarian ghost sect practitioners finished their awakening ceremony after 6 hours. Within the first batch, the best awakened spirit apostle had 6 spiritual pulses. Within the second batch, there were 12 spirit apostles and 2 of them had 9 spirit pulses. For the third batch, only 8 people awakened successfully, but there were 3 with 9 spirit pulses. There were actually 15 people that had awakened successfully in the fourth batch. However, there was only 1 9 spiritual pulse apostle. From the high platform, the sect leader couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief when the Jialan girl awakened successfully with 6 spiritual pulses. Even though 6 spiritual pulses could only be considered average within the spirit apostles, with the sect's full support, it was not impossible to cultivate to a spirit master. As for the other spirit masters, their moods started to become different. Some of them with successful pre-picked practitioners, secretly became immensely happy. While the ones that had their picks fail, with some even dying in the formation, felt very depressed. As for the vacant slots, they could only be filled by the other spirit apostles. Although the clan practitioners were great in number, only a few would succeed in awakening. Besides the ones Goi spirit master named, the rest had little to no hope. With a shout from Lei spirit master, it was finally time for the clan practitioners like Liu Ming. After the first batch of clan practitioners entered the formation for 2 hours, the result caused the faces of Liu Ming's group to turn ugly. Out of the 100 clan practitioners, not a single one of them successfully in opening their spiritual seas. In addition, almost 2/3 of them immediately died. The remaining 30 people walked out of the formation like corpses while the other clan practitioners did not dare walk into the formation. If the rest of you are not willing to enter, that's good. Our sect can save on a large amount of resources. You can all become outer disciplines. Lay Spirit Master smiled coldly as he saw the situation and did not urge the people at all. The cultivation world was originally a world of survival of the fittest. He would not treat any of the clan practitioners with pity. Humph. Why are we still backing out now? I'm going up. One of the clan practitioners spoke and walked out first, taking large steps. This was Lei Zhen from the Lei clan. The Lei Spirit Master saw this from midair and was startled, but quickly started to smile without saying anything else. With someone taking the lead, the rest of the youths finally took up the courage and followed along. Liu Ming's gaze shifted for a bit, and he lightly took in a breath before walking up with this group. Chapter 17, Awakening, Part 3. Chapter 17, Awakening, Part 3. Liu Ming willingly walked to the edge of the stage and calmly sat down. He saw a hint of tiredness in the demeanor of Lei Spirit Master and the rest of his group, since they had initiated the opening spirit ceremony several times already. Also, the crystals surrounding the entire formation no longer shined as brightly and piercing as they did originally. Even though Liu Ming did not know how many times the spirit masters could use their mantra under normal circumstances or the effect the crystals would cause when depleted, he definitely did not wish to be in the last batch to test it out personally. Also, after observing the ceremony several times, Liu Ming had already seen everything he needed to see. Even if he waited until the end, he wouldn't really gain any benefits. Thus, it would be better to just be in an earlier batch and start opening his spiritual sea. Quite a few of the family disciples were able to think through this point. However, the horrific death rate caused some of them to unconsciously flinch and decide to wait it out. Still, 100 people quickly walked in. To Liu Ming's surprise, Gao Chong and Mu Mingzu were also within the formation, causing him to unconsciously give the two a glance. Mu Mingzhu's face did not look too good and carried a hint of fear, obviously shocked by the earlier scene. Although the huge teenager by her side was a bit pale, his expression was notably more stable compared to the girl. Begin. When Lei Spirit Master saw that enough people had entered, he immediately uttered a command. Suddenly, an excited buzz spread throughout the ceremony area as tens of streams of spirit drops started to head toward the formation, creating a thick spirit rain once more. Boom. After the sound, a huge white light fell from the sky, falling steadily toward Liu Ming's body. Liu Ming felt as if his shoulders were carrying 10,000-pound weights. His chest started to heat up and his body collapsed onto the ground, since he was unable to withstand the pressure. At this time, Liu Ming did not care about the other people anymore. He could see himself being wrapped up by the white light. Then, a chill went down his back and it felt like something was quickly squirming into his dantian. After seeing other people's awakening, Liu Ming did not panic. He knew that this was the Spirit Master's energy entering his body. Hitting the floor with both his hands, he tried to lift himself back up. But using only his two arms, his body remained firmly on the ground. Liu Ming felt a bit aghast. Although he saw earlier how hard it was for others to get up, he did not think it would be this hard. He was not the type to be born with godly strength, nor did he specifically train his strength. Thus, trying to get up via normal means was not easy. When Liu Ming thought of this, his breathing started to quicken. However, after taking a couple of deep breaths, he once again slammed the ground as he shouted, letting his body slowly leave the floor. During this time, he actually used a secret technique that permitted his arm strength to momentarily multiply, allowing his body to sit back up. During this, Liu Ming could hear his own bones crunching while his skin started to turn red under the pressure. After a while, Liu Ming was finally able to sit up straight. He spared a few moments to glance at the others, which resulted in a disappointed smile. He was definitely not the first to get up. Many of the other clan practitioners had already sat up, including girls like Liu Ming's. The other clan practitioners were obviously similar to barbarian ghost sect practitioners in that they had training in this area or have control over techniques like Liu Ming's that increase physical energy. But when he saw Lei Zhen, Liu Ming's gaze couldn't help but pause. Lei Zhen had a clear and relaxed expression. His clothes didn't even have the slightest wrinkle, and it seemed as if he was never hit by the white light's pressure at all. As Liu Ming silently guessed why, the formation in the air started to spout out an obscure sound from the spells. The origin of the sound felt as it came from an extremely far location, but at the same time, the sound felt like thunder roaring right next to Liu Ming's ears. Suddenly, Liu Ming's body felt like it was boiling. The yuanli that was unmoving before started to circulate faster and more fiercely to every corner of his body. Although this was anticipated, Liu Ming still felt a heat that tore apart his body while his chi paths were relentlessly bombarded by heaven's and earth's energy. It was as if countless little knives were continuously cutting him, with each cut being more violent and wild. Liu Ming's eyes lit up, but his face did not reveal an expression of pain. On Savage Island, in order to learn all the different secret techniques, Liu Ming's body went through torture. He didn't even remember how many times he felt torture that made death seem more appealing. Also, whenever he finished casting a secret technique, he would always end up in immense pain. After practicing the secret techniques over 1,000 times on Savage Island, Liu Ming's pain tolerance was far beyond what one could imagine. It can be said that it had reached the point of numbness for him. At this time, Liu Ming could easily rid the effect the pain had on his focus. He could devote his attention to using his yuanli manipulation technique combined with the guidance from the mantra to forcibly gather the violent yuanli a shred at a time. Then, he would force them into his danshan. The other clan practitioners were not able to resist pain like Liu Ming. Under the pain, some of the ones with weaker wills completely lost control over the yuanli, letting it rush to their heads. After a few small cycles of violent penetration, the heads of these people started to crack open. And as time passed, other clan practitioners continued to add to the death toll. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Within the formation, less than half of the people were still sitting firmly on the ground. At this time, Lei Zhen let out a long howl. Along his body, stripes of crystal light started to appear, coming out with 9 stripes in all. In addition, each stripe of light showed hints of lightning coursing through them. He awakened extremely early and had 9 spiritual pulses. It really is the lightning-type spiritual pulse within the elemental spiritual pulses, and it's even a 9 spiritual pulse. From the high platform, the barbarian ghost sect leader saw clearly what occurred on Lei Zhen's body and immediately became immensely happy. Looks like our sect picked up a treasure this time. If it was only a lightning-type spiritual pulse or a 9 spiritual pulse, those separate are not very rare. However, with both of them combined, his value to the sect is not any lower than Jia Ian's Aphrodite body. I had thought that Lei Jr. wasn't too active in picking disciples, but he had actually already put his hopes in his own nephew. That single kid wins over the other disciples by 1,000 times. Lin Jr. murmured, while looking at Lei Zhen with a passionate gaze. Lei Jr. also has lightning elemental spiritual pulse. Thus, having him to teach this child is very appropriate. The barbarian sect leader responded. Lin Jr. heard this and murmured a sound of pity. With their blood relation, there's no way other factions could take Lei Zhen. It's a good thing Lei Clan's Lei Jr. is already in our barbarian ghost sect. Otherwise, this kid might not have been sent to our sect. With his talent, he would have huge value in other sects as well. Lin Jr. seemed as if she was on the side of the sect and continued with a smile. Definitely. Especially with the Wind-Fire sect. They originally became famous through lightning-type techniques. If they were able to get this kid, they would probably treat him as a great treasure. The sect leader replied with a laugh. With this kid awakening successfully, only the loose practitioner Gao Chong is worth looking forward to. Oh yes. The kid with the huge mental energy that sect leader Jr. pointed out is also within this batch. I wonder if he will awaken successfully. As Lei Zhen sat down once more, Lin Jr. glanced at the rest of the people in the formation. Success or failure, we will naturally know the results in less than an hour. The barbarian ghost sect leader's tone once again became calm. But as his voice dropped, a huge noise boomed from the formation. Following the sound, a strange energy wave started to roll out, causing the entire plaza to shake. What's going on? What happened? Lin Jr. jumped in fright. Even the sect leader was dumbfounded, and stared at the formation without a word. At this time, a practitioner started to tremble and rose slowly into the air. At the same time, the white light started to twirl around his body, creating a white misty aura. This is... Could it be that that thing has appeared? The sect leader saw the scene, and could no longer stay calm. He instantly went inside the formation without care. At this time, the white light on the practitioner in the air actually started to create a second white aura. Earth rank spiritual pulses. This is the effect of Earth rank spiritual pulses being born. How can this be possible? Lin Jr. finally awoke from her stupor and transformed into rays of light as she quickly rushed toward the practitioner. Above the formation, the lay spirit master, Chu Jr. and the other spirit masters also understood the situation. Almost all of them became incredibly excited as they rushed to that practitioner, watching him and counting the streaks of light appearing before their open eyes. At the moment, the one in midair chanting the mantra was actually the Gui scholar. When he saw the scene, it was obvious how shocked he was. Unfortunately, the mantra was still not complete, so he could only stay in the same position. However, his gaze landed on the practitioner with heavy passion. This practitioner had a huge physique and an honest face. It was Gao Chong from the loose practitioners. At the same time, seated in the corner of the formation and under nobody's notice, a number of white lines had also started to fill Liu Ming's dantian. Under the control of a huge mental energy, the white lines started to crisscross at an unbelievable rate. Through gradual integration, it slowly formed into a single white silver string ball. Chapter 18, Earth Spiritual Pulse and Mu Yongxian. At this time, all the spirit masters including the barbarian ghost sect leader stared unblinkingly at the tall youth drifting down from the air. None of the spirit masters would move their focus to any of the other practitioners. With a puff sound, the 12th light ring formed on Gao Chong's body. He opened both his eyes and involuntarily raised his head to roar. The roar was deep and long. After dozens of breaths, he finally started to calm down. Breaths is an ancient measurement of time, about 3 to 4 seconds. Gao Chong found himself in midair and his startled body immediately started to sink and fall back toward the ground. Child, do not be afraid. At this time, an ancient old voice rang next to Gao Chong's ear. Bang! The youth, under the support of an enormous power, stopped steadily in midair. Following that, a silhouette shook and a blond old man appeared in a hemp garment. His face was filled with a smile while he scanned the youth's body up and down without stop. The voice just now was the barbarian ghost sect leader. Unknowingly, he had revealed his true face at some point. Almost at the same time, the wind started to pick up at the side. Lay Spirit Master, Junior Lin, Junior Chu, and several other Spirit Masters appeared at the same time, but after seeing the sect leader getting there first, they couldn't help but look at each other. Sect leader Senior, this kid is, Junior Chu hesitated for a bit and wanted to say something. You all don't have to say anything. The spirit opening ceremony has not been finished yet. Wait until all the practitioners have awoke, then we can talk about this kid. First return to protecting the formation, otherwise the consequences of our sect rules await you. The sect leader waved his hands and he spoke harshly in an uncompromising manner. The others looked at each other for a moment. Although they were unwilling, under the sect leader's valid words, they could only say yes and return to their original positions. But over half of them still stared at Gao Chong without stop. And when Gao Chong understood the old man in front of him was the barbarian ghost sect leader, he frantically started to bow and pay his respects. No need to be too ceremonious. You already formed an earth spiritual pulse. The formation here and the spirit rain won't have too much of an effect for you. Follow me over there, I want to ask you a few questions. The sect leader stopped the teenager from kneeling with one hand and talked to him in a strangely warm manner. Although Gao Chong still didn't fully understand yet, he naturally couldn't decline an offer while exposed to such shocking treatment. The old man then grabbed the youth's forearm, and flew directly back to the high platform. Junior Lin saw this and followed along without saying another word. The only ones remaining were Junior Chu and his group of spirit masters who could only curse silently in their heart. At the top of the formation, the Gui spirit master, who had been chanting without stop, grew very frantic watching the situation unfold. According to the earlier agreement, the loose practitioners would belong to their 9 infants faction, but the actions of the sect leader obviously showed that he wished to go back on his word. This made him anxious, and he could only wish that the ceremony would immediately end. That way, he could follow the sect leader and question him. It was not only him who had such thoughts. The rest of the spirit masters almost wished the practitioners within the formation would all just quickly die, so that they did not have to waste any more time on them. It should be known, every moment they spent here was a moment more for the sect leader to pull that earth spiritual pulse youth into his faction. This type of 12 spiritual pulse talent was something that only occurs once in 100 years in Dexian. The last time the barbarian ghost sect received talent of this level was at least several hundred years ago. For talent above earth spiritual pulse, the 15 spiritual pulse heaven spiritual pulse had never been seen before in the barbarian ghost sect. Only the top sect in Dexian, Heaven's Moon sect, has ever been blessed by this type of talent, and that was 1,000 years ago. That disciple helped lay the foundation for the Heaven's Moon sect's dominance of power over the rest of the other sects for the next 1,000 years. An earth spiritual pulse could not be compared to a heaven spiritual pulse. Still, as long as Gao Chong matured, it was very possible that barbarian ghost sect would rise in power and strength. The temptation was such that the spirit masters, including Junior Chu, of each faction would naturally use their utmost effort in an attempt to induct this earth spiritual pulse disciple into their faction. This would easily allow their faction to become the number 1 power within the section. As time passed, even though there was not much time until the end of the ceremony, many clan practitioners died painful deaths. For a while, no one was able to awaken successfully. Gui Ryu Shen, Junior Chu, and the others did not take this to heart at all as their gazes swept across the high platform. What they saw on the platform was the sect leader speaking indiscernible words to Gao Chong, who kept nodding his head like a chicken eating rice. Seeing this, Junior Chu and all the spirit masters in the formation grew pale. At this time, a cry came out of the formation. The white light around Liu Ming flashed and started to form white lines. As the lines appeared, the formation began to dance wildly while the air around started to make a buzzing sound. Some spirit masters finally noticed such a large movement and turned their gaze over. Seeing this strange scene, they had hope in their hearts that another good talent had appeared. In contrast to what the spirit masters expected, There were only 3 light rays around Liu Ming's body when the white light stopped and disappeared. He was actually only a 3 spiritual pulse. Junior Chu and Lay Spirit Master saw this and felt disappointed. Immediately, they no longer bothered looking at Liu Ming and turned away, looking back at the high platform. Gui Scholar's eyebrows slightly wrinkled before shaking his head as he no longer gave any attention to Liu Ming. But at this moment, Liu Ming showed a very happy expression. At this time, the silver light ball circled around his body non-stop. After a deep breath, Liu Ming shivered. It felt like every hair on his body had started to absorb a cool stream from the outside world. Although he had only formed 3 spiritual pulses, he had awakened his spiritual sea. Thus, he was definitely a spirit apostle. In reality, during the last crucial moment, Liu Ming split his immense mental energy into one half to guide the energy into his dantian and the other half to weave the energy inside his dantian to force it to form a circle. If he didn't do such a thing, it would have been a completely different story on whether or not he would have been able to awaken his spiritual sea. This feat was due to him mastering Yuanli manipulation and having a strong conscience that could be split in 2. If it had been another disciple, there was no way they would have been able to accomplish this. While Liu Ming was still immersed in his immense happiness, the endless mantra finally stopped. A silhouette appeared and Lay Spirit Master blurrily appeared at the top of the formation. He announced without any expression, "Time is up. The practitioners that were not able to awaken their spiritual seas will all need to leave. There will be people that will take you away from this field. As for the practitioners that successfully awakened their spiritual sea, please rest to the side for a bit. Later, we will go together to the ancestral hall." As the voice fell, the formation came to a stop with a buzz. Junior Chu and the other spirit masters did not say anything and immediately shot toward the high platform. When the Lay Spirit Master saw them, he rolled his eyes and after saying a few more words, he also flew along. Liu Ming saw this occurrence and looked at the high platforms intently. After that, he walked out of the formation but stopped when he saw a dazed girl. This girl was Mu Mingzhu. The girl did not die during the ceremony but also failed to awaken her spiritual sea. With her arrogant personality, the disappointment in her heart could only be imagined. At this time, a young female spirit apostle, who was within the formation and looked similar to Mu Mingzhu, walked over and hugged the girl. She started consoling her softly. The young girl in purple could not hold back the pain in her heart and she cried out loud. In the end, the girl was only 11 to 12 years old. It was impossible for her to control her emotions any longer after receiving this large of a shock. Liu Ming shook his head and started to walk away from the 2 girls. But at this time, the pretty young woman suddenly called out and asked with a smile, "You are young Master Bai, right? I, Mu Yongxian, saw your father several times. Your successful awakening is something to celebrate. If you'd like, why don't you find a chance to visit me? I can introduce several of my good friends to you. So you are an acquaintance of father. Once I manage to have some free time, I will definitely come over for a visit." Liu Ming quickly turned and connected his hands in a polite reply. "Haha. Then I will wait patiently for you. Oh yes, now that you have become a spirit apostle, we will be fellow disciples under the same sect. You do not need to be overly polite. If you don't mind, you can call me Sister Yun." Mu Yongxian smiled sweetly, with her eyebrows showing a hint of seduction. Liu Ming acted as if he did not notice anything and left after a few words. "Aunt Yun. This Bai clan kid is only a 3 spiritual pulse disciple. There's no way he will become a spirit master. Is he even worth roping in?" Mu Mingzhu asked quietly while her eyes were still red. She finally stopped crying when she heard their conversation. "Mingzhu, what would you know? It is not that easy to become a spirit master. Our sect has over 1,000 spirit apostles but less than 30 spirit masters. From that, you can see how hard it is reach such an achievement. Even the people with 9 spiritual pulses simply train a little faster than 6 spiritual pulses like mine. Their chances of becoming a spirit master are only higher by 1 or 2%. Moreover, to keep a foothold in the sect is not an easy thing. If that kid can add a shred of strength to my circle, it would be worth it to rope him in. There are no disadvantages. Mu Yungxian shook her head and spoke in a voice that almost could not be heard. Aunt Yun, is your position in the sect not too good? Do I need to? Relax. You don't need to worry about me. Although you did not become a spirit apostle, as long as I am here, you won't have to experience too many grievances. This isn't a place to speak too much. Leave first. About the situation in the sect and the different taboos, I will find another chance to let you know in detail. The young aunt cut off the young girl's words, and told her in a solemn manner. Mu Mingzu felt her heart tremble and naturally nodded her head before following her aunt out of the formation. At this time, Liu Ming arrived in the midst of the barbarian ghost sect disciples that had successfully awakened their spiritual sea. He then casually sat next to a delicate and sweet-looking young girl. The young girl turned her head and looked carefully at his face. A strange look flashed in her eyes, but her face quickly grew emotionless as she turned back around. Chapter 19, Sect Disciple. Though Liu Ming thought it was odd, he did not put it to heart. He then glanced at the high platform in the distance. Over there, a group of spirit masters were circling a tall youth, and it seemed like they were talking about something with him. However, due to the large distance, Liu Ming could not hear the contents of the discussion. He could faintly feel that the atmosphere was somewhat tense over there. At the same time, on the other circular high platforms, there were also quite a few groups discussing what had occurred with each other. Senior Si Ma. It looks like our days in the future won't be easy. Haha, this year actually has 3 extremely talented disciples. One with an Aphrodite body, another with 9 spiritual pulses of the lightning attribute, and an earth spiritual pulse that's only seen once in 100 years. This batch of disciples is probably far more important in our master's eyes than us. A tall, skinny, young man who was wearing a long green robe and had numerous bone spears situated on his back smiled and revealed his observations to a man next to him who exuded a chilling aura. Humph. Even if their talent is great, so what? Senior Zhao, Senior Lan used to have far more talent than us, but where are they now? Although our sect values individual talent, it also pushes for free competition between disciples, and has a survival of the fittest mindset. Otherwise, the yearly small competitions, the big competition, and the life and death trial every 3 years would be a joke. Although these 3 juniors have overwhelming talent, they will still need to train for many years before they can threaten us. More so, even if there are people that worry about their position in the sect, I'm afraid we won't be those people. Senior Yang and Senior Qian will have to worry about this even more. The gloomy man closed his eyes, before replying with a cold smile. Haha. That's true. They always place as the top 10 core disciples. Now that we suddenly have so many impressive juniors, they won't be able to sit so calmly anymore. After hearing that, the tall, skinny, young man laughed lightly. At the same time, on the other side of the circular high platform, 2 girls that were situated between a group of female outer sect disciples started to discuss the same topic. An earth spiritual pulse. I truly did not expect it to appear in our sect. Kui'er, looks like you will have a strong foe in the future. In terms of cultivation speed, your spirit marrow body was definitely at the top. This allowed you to become a late spirit apostle from a beginning spirit apostle in 3 years. However, the earth spiritual pulse contains 12 spiritual pulses. This allows him to absorb heaven and earth energy several times faster than the average disciple, which is probably slightly faster than you. In addition, someone with an earth spiritual pulse will have a much easier time reaching the spirit master realm compared to someone with a spirit marrow body. An older woman in yellow spoke lightly to a 15 to 16-old girl in a green dress. Is the Earth spiritual pulse really that amazing? I still can't believe that with my spirit marrow body, I can't compare to his cultivation speed. If it comes to it, I'll just play less in the future and use more time for training. The pigtailed girl stuck her tongue out, revealing a very cute face. I knew you weren't applying your full attention to training. From now on, you will live with me. I will personally supervise your training. A blue-dressed girl said happily while revealing a beautiful smile. Senior Chien, please don't, the green-dressed, young girl's face instantly turned miserable. When the outer sect girls saw this, they couldn't help but smile secretly. So how do all of you view our new Earth Spiritual Pulse Jr.? A large man dressed in a tight suit moved his gaze from the high platform to the companions next to him. Standing next to him were spirit apostles that were quite old, around 30 to 40 years old. There was even an elder that had fistfuls of white hair. Senior Wu's question is a bit strange. We have already passed the age to fight for a core disciple position. The hope of becoming a spirit master to us is basically non-existent. Even if this tiny junior has amazing talent, it doesn't have anything to do with us. Another dark-skinned, large man around the age of 30 asked back in curiosity. That might not be certain. Senior Feng, how do you see it? The big man dressed in the tight suit turned around to ask the elder with white hair behind him. Junior Wu, if you have something to say then say it directly. We have known each other for quite some time now. There's no need for all these twists and turns. The white-haired old man replied expressionlessly. When the others heard this, they also revealed questioning gazes. Haha. Since Senior has put it like this, I will be frank. I'm planning to lead us to go and submit to that kid, our junior Gao. The vigorous man said with a laugh and did not hide anything anymore. What? Submit to that kid that just became a spirit apostle? Immediately, there was someone that couldn't control his voice. Right. Don't any of you know that because we are too old to compete for a core disciple position, the resources we get from the sect are many times lower than before? Normally we can only risk our lives to accomplish missions in order to gather contribution points to continue training. Under this kind of situation, do you think we have a chance to aim for Spirit Master? According to what I know, everybody over 30 years old that becomes a Spirit Master uses an enormous amount of resources. In addition, they rely on the help of other Spirit Masters and good luck in order to barely enter the Spirit Master realm. The vigorous man spoke slowly. Oh. Junior Wu means that we should bet on the fact that this Earth Spiritual Pulse kid will definitely become a Spirit Master. And if we go submit to him now, then later on he may help us out when he becomes a Spirit Master. The white-haired old man's eyes opened, since he understood what the vigorous man meant. Senior Feng is right. That is what I meant. The sect has strict rules and us older disciples cannot compete with the new disciples. Still, rules are dead and people are alive. If it's just a bit of indirect help, our little junior shouldn't refuse. Also, this type of stuff has been done before. The vigorous man replied with confidence. Yes, this is definitely a way. As everyone understood what the big man meant, they couldn't help but grow interested. Looking at the situation now, relying only on their own strength to break into the Spirit Master realm was definitely impossible. However, if it was with the help of another Spirit Master, a shred of hope would appear. You all can do that, but I will not participate. The white-haired old man was quiet for a while before he spoke as he shook his head. Senior Feng, why not? Junior Wu was very surprised. All of you juniors can still be considered young. As for me, after battling with 1,000-foot ghost once, I sacrificed over half of my life force to cast a forbidden technique. Even my appearance has turned this old. Even if a Spirit Master helps, there is still no chance of becoming a Spirit Master for me. So, a few days ago I applied at the duty hall to leave the sect and establish my own clan. Haha, even if I cannot become a spirit master, I still cannot let my bloodline disappear. The white-haired old man gave a wry smile and explained. As others heard this, their expressions grew dim. In a hidden room within a mountain in the barbarian ghost sect, a person had his eyes closed while sitting in an area filled with black air. Suddenly, one of the secret holes in the room opened and a piece of paper quickly flew in. Those guys. Didn't I say to not disrupt my cultivation unless there was something important? The dark shadow saw the scene and grew frustrated. However, with a move of his hand, the piece of paper fell into his palm. He lowered his head and gave it a quick glance. What? This year not only had the Geolan girl's Aphrodite body but also a 9 spiritual pulse with a lightning attribute. Even the legendary Earth spiritual pulse appeared. Haha. This is amazing. Yang, was just thinking that the sect's big competition was getting boring, but it looks like I can look forward to the upcoming years. After the dark shadow saw the paper, he was no longer angry and instead laughed out loud in happiness. The laughter shook the entire room. The dark air also started to shake violently and spread out. Faintly, an enormous skeleton tens of feet tall could be seen standing behind the dark shadow. Liu Ming gave a calm look outside the formation. When the clan practitioners saw that Liu Ming and many others had been able to become spirit apostles, they grew excited, and the third batch quickly assembled. And as the people on the high platform finally finished what they were saying, Lay Spirit Master, Goi Scholar, and the other Spirit Masters also flew back with a gloomy expression. After that moment, the buzzing sound of the formation rang out once more and the opening spirit ceremony started once again. Half a day later, as the daylight grew dim, the last surviving batch of clan practitioners numbly walked out of the formation. Out of the 8 remaining batches of clan practitioners, only 6 people successfully awakened their spirit seas. In addition, most of them were on the level of Liu Ming with 3 spiritual pulses. From the other 2 loose practitioners, only the red-haired youth was able to become a spirit apostle. But the spirit masters present didn't pay much attention and hurriedly announced the end of the opening spirit ceremony. Besides one of them staying behind, the rest of them flew back to the high platform once more. Obviously, when they were speaking with Gao Chong earlier, there had been no results. The remaining spirit master slowly landed in front of the group of spirit apostles. As the light dispersed from their body and showed their true appearance, it was surprisingly a woman in her 40s. She wore rough clothing and had an ordinary appearance, but her gaze was abnormally cold. I am your martial aunt. Follow me. You will first arrive and wait in the ancestral hall. The sect leader will arrive there shortly. The lady told them this and performed a technique with one hand. Opening her mouth once more, she blew out rich dark air. The dark air scattered in 4 directions before turning into a black cloud the size of an acre. It floated quietly as if it were flat ground. The lady walked up the black cloud without a single word. When the disciples saw this, they hurried to get on. Liu Ming stood on the black cloud and looked at the headless corpses in the formation that still hadn't been cleaned up. Then, the dark cloud rose up, carrying tens of new spirit apostles toward a faraway mountain peak. Chapter 20, Belonging. The barbarian ghost sect had dozens of mountains of differing sizes, however, most of them belonged to the 8 different factions within the sect. Only the largest mountain of them did not belong to any fraction and instead housed the duty hall, scripture library, alchemy room, and other very important structures that belonged to the sect. Even at night, there were carefully selected disciples to patrol and guard the area. Since the ancestral halls is where all the barbarian sect disciples pay their respects to their ancestors, it was naturally constructed on this largest mountain. The giant dark cloud started to descend upon a flat platform at the middle of the mountain. From a nearby hall, many green-robed disciples flew out to pay their respects to the lady on the black cloud. They said, "Welcome Martial Uncle Li, everything within the ancestral hall has been readied. All that is left is the sect leader and all of the martial uncles." Good. First lead the new disciples inside. After a while, the sect leader will also come along. The lady ordered very casually. Yes, Martial Uncle. The green-robed disciples nodded and then headed toward Liu Ming and his group of people. After a greeting, they brought the new disciples toward the large hall. The lady stood in place without moving as if she was going to wait outside for the barbarian ghost sect leader and others. Sandwiched between the group of people, as Liu Ming entered the hall doors, he glanced upwards. Hanging from above was a long silver plaque. On it, the words Ancestral Hall were written in golden letters, with a faint crystal light swirling on the plaque. As soon as they entered the large door, quite a few disciples took a deep cold breath. From the outside, the building looked like a normal temple hall, but the inside was actually a hall hundreds of feet tall and stretching acres wide. Within the hall there were hundreds of black chairs. At the end of the hall there was a long ancient painting. The painting portrayed the back of a person in green. On his head, a long hairpin could be seen while he had a long sword without a sheath swung over his back. His feet were stepping on two abnormal and hideous skulls that had a layer of black aura, giving off an extremely mysterious feeling. Beneath the drawing, there was a silver altar around 50 to 60 feet long. To each side, a lantern was lit. At the center, there were 15 to 16 golden tablets with different names written in black on them. And in front of the altar there was a large green cauldron. Scores of scented candles burned down over halfway were still stuck in it, allowing it to give off a solemn feeling. After the green-robed disciples led all the other disciples to stand in the hall, they returned to standing straight at the doorway, not caring in the least about the newest disciples. As all the youths saw this, they couldn't help but look at each other. However, being affected by the solemn feeling in the hall, nobody dared to whisper secretly. They could only stand in place and wait honestly. Liu Ming sized up the four corners of the huge hall, and unconsciously let his gaze fall back into the huge drawing hanging at the front. For this painting to be hung in such an important spot, the figure within the painting would probably be the founder of the barbarian ghost sect. However, the fact that the painting only showed a backline was quite peculiar. Liu Ming's random thoughts didn't last long, since after a couple of minutes, footsteps sounded from the entrance of the hall. The green-robed disciples bowed in unison and said, "Greetings to the sect leader and various martial uncles." Stan, the barbarian ghost sect leader, faintly came, and many spirit master came in from the entrance. At the end of their line was the barbarian sect leader. At this time, the spirit masters had dispersed their protecting light and showed their true faces. Liu Ming and the new disciples quickly followed suit and bowed. However, the barbarian ghost sect leader did not let everyone rise. Instead, he brought the others to go to the ceremonious table and place a candle within the bronze three-footed pot. Afterwards, he turned around to allow everyone to rise. "I am Huangshi. I think that over half of you know me, so I will not waste my time. Since all of you have opened your spirit seas, you will become a true barbarian ghost sect disciple after you pay your respects to our founder. The painting within this ancestral hall is our founder Six Yin. Of the 8 factions that our sect has, 6 of them were founded from him. The slates below the painting represent ancestors that have stepped into the crystallization state. Without them, our sect definitely would have fallen. Now, all of you will pay your respects to them and state your name at the same time." The barbarian ghost sect leader solemnly said. "Crystallization state? Is there a state above the spirit master state?" Liu Ming heard this phrase for the first time and felt a tinge in his heart. As someone who wasn't a practitioner from birth, he really knew too little about this world. Seeing how the other disciples were shocked by this, they probably knew about this beforehand. While Liu Ming was thinking about those things, Gao Chong, who was an Earth Spiritual Pulse disciple, under the direction of the sect leader, kneeled down first in front of the painting and said, "Disciple Gao Chong, after being accepted in Barbarian Ghost Sect today, wishes for the founder and various ancestors to look after me. I will try my best to bring pride and power to the sect." Afterwards, he stood up and placed a candle into the huge bronze pot before returning to his place. With someone starting it off, the youths gradually walked up to pay their respects. Their words were all alike to Gao Chang's. As soon as all of the disciples finished paying their respects, the barbarian ghost sect leader once again stood in front of everyone. He said with a motionless expression, "Our sect has 3 forbidden rules, 36 sect laws. Break a single one of them and the worst will be destruction of your flesh while pulling out your soul, the easiest would be the sealing of your folly while being thrown into the Black Wind Valley to go experience the wind lightning punishment. As for the full descriptions of these sect rules, someone will tell you in detail in a few days. All of you better take care of yourselves. TL, folly is the spirit apostle version of Yuanli." Yes. The group of disciples replied loudly with all their heart. Also, our sect also splits into 8 factions: Dancing Ghost, Baleful Yin, Mysterious Glyphs, 9 Infants, Poisonous Spirit, Corpse Refinery, Heaven's Secret, and Blood Control. According to traditional practice, the martial uncles from each of the 8 sects will take turns picking you. Do any of you have any comments? The barbarian ghost sect leader asked patiently. Naturally, none of the disciples would actually speak out an object. Seeing this, the sect leader continued satisfied, "Since it's like that, then let an old man like me represent the blood control faction to first pick a disciple. Gao Chang, your talent is not bad, are you willing to join the blood control faction and become my personal disciple?" As soon as the words were out, the barbarian ghost sect leader's gaze fell sharply onto the tall youth. Gao Chang is willing to become sect leader's disciple. As the tall youth heard the old man, he walked out of the group without hesitation and gave a large bow to the old man in respect. "Good, child, you can get up. From now on you are this old man's 7th personal disciple. Your other Shixiangs and Shijis will be introduced to you later when you follow me to our residence." The barbarian ghost sect leader laughed loudly and allowed the tall youth to get up and retreated to the side with him. The Ru, Chu, and lay spirit masters had ugly faces when they saw this but didn't actually speak up against this. "I am Chu Chi, the faction leader of Baleful Yin. Ru Lan, come over here." Chu spirit master then walked out and waved to a girl that was mixed in among the crowd. Chu spirit master, who showed his true face, actually looked about 30 years old and was quite handsome. "What? She's the one who has the Aphrodite's body." "No way. I know her, isn't her name is Shu Er?" "Stupid, she used a fake name." The disciples next to the girl quickly made way while the other disciples started muttering among themselves. The girl treated all of this commotion as if it was nothing and walked out of the crowd with a calm face. After slightly bowing to Chu Chi, she stood up without any orders. Chu Chi showed approval and nodded before bringing the girl to his side. "Aphrodite's body." Liu Ming stared at the girl again before remembering the extremely beautiful girl that he saw while waiting for his opening spirit ceremony. Suddenly, he connected the dots and realized the relationship between the two. "Leijia, what are you waiting for? Get over here." The lay spirit master stood where he was and yelled at Lei Zhen among the crowd. The edges of Lei Zhen's eyes twitched as he walked out of the crowd as if he was unwilling. Like this, the 8 factions picked their first disciple. 8 of the most talented disciples quickly followed behind the various spirit masters. The Gui spirit master helplessly chose a 9 spiritual pulse disciple. It seemed like this was the best disciple he could gather under the approval of the sect leader. For the 9 infant faction leader, being able to have a 9 spiritual pulse disciple was definitely something that was worthy of celebration. However, when he thought about the earth spiritual pulse disciple that was promised to his faction, he could only force his smile. As for the other factions, they all chose 9 spiritual pulse disciples. In the second round, all the factions basically choose the remaining 9 spiritual pulses, 6 spiritual pulses and disciples that showed talent in a particular subject. As a 3 spiritual pulse disciple, Liu Ming naturally wasn't able to be chosen in the first few rounds. However, when the 6 spiritual pulse disciples were all chosen, someone finally noticed Liu Ming. It was Ghost Dance Faction's Lin Spirit Master. Her full name was Lin Kiu and looked like a 20-year-old girl. When her gaze swept across Liu Ming, she remembered how the sect leader said that Liu Ming's mental energy was much stronger than normal people. Their sect relied quite heavily on the art of illusions and thus needed some disciples that had decent mental energies. After pondering for a moment, Lin's Spirit Master decided that when it was her turn again, she would choose Liu Ming. As for the barbarian ghost sect leader, he was already planning out the training route for Gao Chong and completely forgot about Liu Ming. However, something happened beyond Lin's Spirit Master's expectations. "Oh, your name is Bai Chong Tian, right? Are you willing to our 9 infant faction?" When it was the Gui Spirit Master's turn, he pointed to Liu Ming and asked in a carefree voice. Part 2 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.